5 major challenges in transformation. Maintaining that priority on what matters for long-term success, not going off the rails. I mean, I guess this is a problem. You may go through different CEOs, IOs, project managers, operational heads, where the transformational benefit remains the same and the viability's there, but someone will come in with a competing agenda or a competing interest. And how do you ensure that stays on track?
This problem has actually changed, I think, over the last maybe 10 years or so. I don't think it's the same challenge that it used to be. It's still a big challenge, but it's kind of different. If we go back maybe 10 years or so and we started a major new initiative, it was built around a big capital investment. And it wasn't real simple to actually start changing direction halfway through. You might have around the edges, but a capital investment's a capital investment. There's someone in the chief financial officer's office saying, when am I getting some value back from that? But as we move more to software as a service products, things we can turn off. It's not unusual for projects now to change direction. And the problem is sometimes that could be a good idea. And sometimes it's rubbish. You shouldn't do it. So we've even invented a new term for it, called a pivot. Should we pivot this project and go and do something else? The key to it is, am I making the right decision? And that's not the project team's decision. That's the organisation's executive's decision. So where's their transformational governance? And we talk about this all the time, that people have governance processes set up for old-fashioned decisions that have been dated. We don't have those sorts of decisions anymore. We need governance processes set up that are quick, that are well-informed, and can make a decision around, is a pivot a good idea? Or is it a pivot just someone's new idea that's never been through a business case and is crazy? We need to understand the differences.
Also, what's important here, there's two things, and I'll just say a little bit about both of them. The first is leadership, and I'm just going to leave that there. But good leadership really does filter this down to make this work for an organisation. But the second piece that I see in terms of an organisational capability is allowing a spot to live and thrive within your organisation that lets them play with what happens into the future, and model that and understand what that means for you in your industry and for your type of organisation. Having an innovation centre, having it funded and responsible for helping put the context and the right for your organisation around these decisions is critical today. Like, there's no way that any organisation can sit there today without having that awareness into the future, their competitors, their marketplaces, their customers who are driving more and more what an organisation shape and form looks like into the future. If you don't have that as a dedicated function within your organisation, then this question is never going to be able to be answered.
We talk about it all the time. You have to invest in being an organisation that can transform.
About a business strategy and the transformation strategy are not only intertwined, they're almost joined at the hip. If the business strategy changes in any which way or form, the transformation needs to be recalibrated. At the same time, if those key threads and those eyes are left off the ball, it's such a danger that some projects might pivot for the wrong reasons. So it does make it such a high priority. So transformation advisory, maybe it's an innovation team that the CEO or proxy needs to be part of. Clearly, architecture from a technical point of view, key business heads, those managing engagement, as you mentioned, Miranda. Who's facing the customer and what does that look like? Of course, product. Of course, delivery and ultimately service will come into that play. And that's as you say, that's the 3 to 5 year horizon, plus any disruptions if the guys across the road come up with something fantastic.
Yeah. We talk about the CEO having to be involved all the time. It's actually not easy for them to do it, because in most organisations there's a whole bunch of barriers to that, which I think about if you're going to be transformational, you've got to get rid of them. Like barrier number one would be you don't have what Keith has just talked about. You don't have a governance process for them to even touch the initiative, to actually get to it. There's a steering committee over here somewhere in the old way we did things, and the CEO in their office, and they don't go to it. So they get third-hand information and tell people to do things next time and next month when they're in the steering committee. First of all, there's no mechanism, but the second problem is that they're not well informed because there's no mechanism to actually show them a high-level design, generally designed by people in your organisation. Most organisations don't have those people to say, here's our plan in a way you can consume, Chief Executive Officer who's a business person, about what we're trying to achieve and what the challenges are. So it's so difficult. There's no language, no mechanism for them to be involved. In my book, and I think we all agree at least, big transformational initiatives, they've got to be involved. But lots of papers say it, but very few actually give any advice on how that might work. I'm positioning myself in the CEO's office thinking, well, I'd love to have an influence on that initiative. How do I do it? And even if they go to the meeting, people are talking a different language. They haven't been briefed in terms they can understand. They might have a bit of bravado in there because most CEOs do have a bit of that, but it's not actually helping. They haven't got into the understanding of the issues, challenges, objectives, benefits of the initiative.
Yeah, it does make you wonder, what the board's role here might be, even to ask the right questions and ensure the right governance is taking place. Because if these things are left to operational departments without senior leadership support, sponsorship, and/or direction, it's unlikely they're going to be right. And meanwhile, as you said, it's 100, 200, 300 million that's riding on it. Starts in 2020, ends in 2025. People get to 2024 and they're not even sure exactly where they are, where the board should really be across that enough to at least to be asking the right risk-based, competitive. There's so many questions they should be hitting the CEO for. And with that being said, that would be a simple mechanism to ensure that the CEO is indeed across this.
I just want to make this point. I know Miranda's going to jump in there, but I've got to just say something linked to your 20 to 2025, get to 24 and it's all broken point. We see this all the time. We're not talking about one or two projects in Australia. We're talking about the vast majority of them. This is, and I think because they're not physical, because we don't have buildings and bridges falling down everywhere, people don't often recognise just how big a deal this is. This is a really common problem.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, 80%'s the magic number. It may be better or worse in industries and competencies, but it's a huge number.
Well, there's kind of two things you were just mentioning about, the boards before, Keith, and it was a very quick and cheap and cheerful survey that we just did recently on LinkedIn, and we asked that question of our audience, and we said, what is the board's responsibility in transformation? And 61% of the people who did respond, and we had about 300 responses, I think, from memory, said that it is 100% their responsibility and they need to be actively involved.
The AICD, the Australian Institute of Company Directors, would agree with you as well. In an annual report that they did a couple of years ago, they made the point that the biggest challenges for boards was to understand transformation initiatives that were technically based, because boards aren't configured that way. Boards have people who are great at managing business outcomes and finances and legal issues and risk. But what they have done in the past is to start hiring an expert to be on the board to say, well, I'm on the board because I understand this transformation stuff and maybe I understand some digital stuff as well. The problem with that is the rest of the people on the board could never really be sure that that person's right, because they haven't got the ability to interrogate their thinking. So there's a one-off expert's probably not the right way to address this problem. And the AICD actually agree with that. They don't think it's the right way either. The correct way, I think, to address the problem is that the board, this is a key word, understands what's happening so that they can process it and make a good decision about it. And most of them aren't set up for that. So the help they need is help in building understanding. They don't need someone to give them an answer. The answer has no value because they can't determine if it's the correct answer. What they need is to be able to understand the objectives, the likelihood of success, the current status of transformational initiatives.
Oh, spot on. I mean, how could you govern them if you didn't understand those at the most basic?
How many times I get a face that glazes over when I start talking about tech, and it's like, well, that's kind of not my thing. That's not what that's not what I'm chartered to do as a board member, because I'm all about organisational success. And I think there's a significant underestimation in that level of executive of the fact that it's all about the tech, and you don't need to understand it. But today, in where we're being driven by as organisations, if you're not embracing tech and you can't be a business.